Hello and welcome to another Shared Screens review. Joining me to talk all things Final Fantasy XVI, I got Jordan Deeb. How you doing, Jordan?
Hey yo, I'm doing pretty good.
Ready to talk about some not RPG games? Because this is definitely not an RPG.
I'm not gonna be the authority on that, but sure.
This is a character action game. Character action game. If you've ever seen one, this feels like more like God of War than like any RPG I've ever played. If I
That's
if
fair.
I if I had to choose.
That's fair. I'm
So,
not disliking that, but I
oh,
feel that.
I'm at the exact same field where it's like people are commenting where it's like this is definitely an RPG, and I'm like, you're right. As I continue playing
You
my
know,
game.
yeah. I'll rephrase what I said earlier. I don't feel uncomfortable saying it's not an RPG.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go ahead and say it's not a Final Fantasy because
Yeah.
I'm not versed enough to
Mhm.
to make that distinction. You know, I'm not Mr. Fantasy. I mean, I
Look,
can be, but call
look,
me.
it's not an RPG. It has chocobos. Final Fantasy.
Boom.
Boom. It has chocobos. That's all you need. So I do want to start out with our review where it's at the top. This is more of a impression so far piece because this is a big ass game and we have lives and I have a full-time job and I have things going on. So I am
Same.
only so far into the game. Jordan, you were going to be the lead and then we're like, damn, this is a big ass game. Was that the intention?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's start out just with that premise. What is your history with Final Fantasy, if you would?
Sure. So I think I've talked about it before, but I'll get into a little bit more detail here. I first built my PC in 2019. You're like, why are you talking about this? You'll see. And I wanted like games that maybe I'd missed out on that like this mid-range PC I had bought could run. And I also wanted to use that as an opportunity to like play games I hadn't played before that kind of interested me. And also I was like, because I want to get used to mouse and keyboard, see whether or not I like these games, Steam demo page was like my best friend. And I downloaded a demo to this little thing called Final Fantasy 15.
Oh,
Enjoyed it, and I was like, that is a I'll play it someday game. You know what I mean? When you
yeah.
because I then found it on sale, bought it, and was like, I'll get to you when I get to you.
I kept seeing people call it like Sasuke and the Boys or something like that.
Okay, I think we're on very different parts of Twitter then, because I always see it referred to as the gay one. And well, listen, that is what I see on Twitter. I'm not queer, but for some reason my timeline is, I guess, because a lot of people are just like, no, that's the gay Final Fantasy, and I'm like, hell yeah, happy Pride, everyone.
How about it?
Um, but yeah, so then a year later, pandemic comes along. I didn't get to hop on the Tiger King bandwagon because I was still in school, but school ended. Final Fantasy 15, fell in love with the story, fell in love with the world, fell in love with the characters. Later that year, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Also loved it. Really was happy I got to experience that classic story that I had heard so much about. I had seen Cloud in a bajillion places, but never really knew what he was from.
Hmm.
Was very delighted in that demo when I found out that Wedge was voiced by the guy from Breaking Bad, so that was cool.
I forgot Wedge was a character's name for like
I
half.
almost forgot his name.
But here's the thing. You said Wedge, boom, he was there. But
Exactly.
it took a second though. I was like, is that a person?
See, I almost called him Badger, which is his name in Breaking Bad.
That makes sense. That makes
But
sense.
yeah,
Right.
so I absolutely love that. I played through either half or 75%, because I don't know the full game, of Crisis Core later last year. And then I went home for the holidays and I came back addicted to Mario 3D World and Kirby the Forgotten Lands. And so, it's time to play those.
Of course.
And now I'm here with Final Fantasy 16, and I'm liking it. But I'm not loving it.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
That's kind of where I'm at too. Where Blessing Junior over at Kind of Funny kind of described like the narrative and like the intensity as like a sort almost like a Dragon Ball Z episode, and I totally agree. Like when they go to like the icon fights, they're called icons, right? EIKON or something like that. The icon fights, it feels like an episode of Dragon Ball Z, just like less articulate, but it feels like that, and they have the drama beat from like point to point, and I enjoy it for that. I don't love it for that, but go on, go ahead.
No. I mean, if you were going to give your history, and then we could get into like our general thoughts.
Yeah. My history with Final Fantasy, the first time I ever saw Cloud was in Kingdom Hearts something. So if that tells you anything about me as a Final Fantasy player, I think the first one I played all the way through because I had dabbled in a few. I feel like I say that a lot on reviews. Like I dabbled in a few games, and that was just me growing up. Like I'd play like an hour and a half of this and an hour and a half of that because I was renting it or I was at a person's house or whatever. And that was just how I played games because I only played at that time like sports and racing games because I didn't really consider myself a gamer at that point. But the first time I saw Cloud was in a Kingdom Hearts game. I played all the way through Final Fantasy VII Remake when it came out 2020. Okay. Yeah, and I loved that game for what it was. I really enjoyed the aesthetic of the game. I enjoyed once I understood what they were doing with the narrative and twisting it and turning it. I thought that was really interesting, and I actually did dive in and read a little bit about it just to see like what was changing, what was the initial thing. I really really enjoyed it, and it was stunning. Like it was just a
Mhm.
stunning video game, and I think that all those feelings that I just shared, I shared that with Final Fantasy 16. Not necessarily how they're changing the story because it's a new
It's the
thing,
new one, yeah.
but I like the intrigue that I felt for Final Fantasy 7 is still there for Final Fantasy 16, and I think that's because they're doing it in a way where the storytelling is compelling and the characters are compelling. There are a few things I have and nitpicks that I have with the characters and the storytelling, but I do think overall it's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake was the only Final Fantasy I had like genuinely played up until 16.
Yeah.
So that's my history with
So
the
we're definitely more newer fans because we haven't
correct.
played the turn-based ones. And in fact, I've said 100 times that I don't, outside of Pokemon, I can't get into turn-based. If I really want to start thinking about my history with Final Fantasy, it's going to like the local game store back when I was younger and looking at games for like that had really cool covers on the PS2 or really interesting names and
Yeah,
characters for
cool
my Game
hair.
Boy Advance SP. Yeah, but then I look up like gameplay footage and I'm like, why are they just standing there?
Yeah.
I wanna run, I want to slash, and
Mhm.
so I was always like, I'll keep my eye on it.
Yeah, it always makes sense when you're a kid to kind of look at that and be like, that looks boring. Like I think I felt like the same thing. It wasn't until I was like a teenager at least that I was at least like comprehending that games could do more with than just like slashy blood stuff.
No, that's all.
Yeah.
That's all games should be. Slashy, slashy blood stuff in Tetris.
And then for me, it was Madden because I was just a fuck.
Gotcha.
That was just me. I was just Madden and Need for Speed, which Need for
Yeah,
Speed best soundtrack ever made. Just saying.
I was a theater kid, so I can't play sports real life or in video games because I don't know the rules of football.
I was both. I wasn't in theater that much though. I was like
Yeah.
in like two plays, I think, and that's it. So I don't even know if I consider myself a theater kid. I was just in theater, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right. You wanted to carry on from that point after
Yeah.
the history?
So, like generally speaking, I'll say that Final Fantasy 16 is a game that I'm really liking, but I'm not loving. Personally, I don't see all the hype that is surrounding the game right now that a lot of people are saying it's the best thing ever. But am also only about halfway through the story. However, a lot of my gripes with it are things that I don't expect to change. For a Final Fantasy game, the game is surprisingly linear. And while 7 was more linear than 15 was, with 15 being pretty much completely open world, I was compelled to do side missions in 7 Remake that I'm not compelled to do any of the side missions here in 16 because you're just jumping from this linear area to that linear area and so on. Characters like Clive and Sid are fantastic, but Jill is unfortunately boring, and I wish they're giving her more to do because I like her character. User on Twitter, the Kenneson, said, I like Jill, but I just wish the writers did. And that's truly how I feel about it. So I'd say right now, about halfway into the game, it's shaping out to me to be like a solid 8 out of 5 out of 10.
8 out of 5 out of 10?
8.5 out of 10. My bad.
I was like, what does that even mean? But this is my score, an algebraic equation out of 10.
A
Oh,
squared plus B squared equals C squared equals Final Fantasy.
but no, 8.5 seems right because, and I'll get more into it as we continue. There, when I played God of War Ragnarok for a sec, because this honest to God, this game feels like God of War to me. Just the way it's structured, the way like the character moments, the combat, like it feels like a God of War like to me. I understand it's completely different. It's from a Japanese studio, and that it shows and everything. And I'm just saying, to me, it feels more like a God of War character action game than like a Final Fantasy. Even though I haven't played that many, it just doesn't scream Final Fantasy to me. However, I think this game was made for me because when I played God of War Ragnarok, I was like, there's too much gear, there's too many things to do, like in the combat. Even though that was a gripe that people had in God of War 2018, where like there's only a few things. This what felt like a happy medium for me as a game player, because like there's like for gear there's like 3 options. It's like the sash or whatever, the gauntlets, and the sword, and I think that's perfect.
And
Like
I'd
that is
argue
good for me.
that in some ways it's less of, I guess this isn't a staple of it being an RPG. So I'm using this term
Sure.
loosely, but I'd say it's even less of an RPG traditionally speaking than God of War because none of the cosmetics change at all.
I
Now,
totally
granted,
agree.
15 I've only played 2 Final Fantasy games. I'm assuming a lot of the previous ones where you had less technology, there weren't a lot of cosmetic options, but like 15 gave you a few different outfits, a few different perks. But in 7 Remake, sure, Cloud and Tifa really don't change their outfits depending on what you spec them with, but the way I see it, and Austin, you'll actually be able to understand the comparison I'm making here. Pokemon introduced character customization in Gen 6 with the X and Y games.
Hmm.
But the Gen 6 remakes of the Gen 3 games, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, there was no character customization because back when those games were made, there wasn't. And so they're keeping the original look,
Yep.
which is why I'm not surprised that there weren't alternate costumes for Cloud and Tifa. But I would have, you know, I would have liked to see like small details like the gloves and the belt change with your upgrades, but I get why the whole outfit doesn't, because without getting into spoilers, the clothes actually like do something story-wise at a point when Clive changes clothes.
Yeah, when you put on gear, it doesn't change, but I do think it's a added bonus that throughout the game, like your clothing does kind of change anyway. Like it sticks to the like once you have an outfit, you kind of have that for like a few chapters or missions or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
it does progressively kind of change over time, and you get more ragged or whatever. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that's just that's a like a comfort or a compliment to that system that they have going on there. Okay, I did want to start with just like some bad-ish stuff, not like whether it's good or bad. Like this is the stuff that I find a little nitpicky for me because I don't think anything about this game is terrible or bad. I think like this is a solid current
Agreed.
gen game. But if I had to nitpick some stuff, I didn't know where to put this. But again, this is not an RPG. I'm not saying this is bad. I just think I did again the good and bad. I didn't know where to put this. So if you're going into a Final Fantasy thing and you kind of went like media blackout on this and you're like you know, big sprawling RPG, you're not going to get that like that's not what this is. And it feels like a God of War game, like I've said on more than one occasion on just this podcast. It is a God of War like, in my opinion. The genuine bad thing that I have, characters in this game are fantastic. 90% of the relationships between characters are rushed as fuck. Like they just
Are you talking
go
romantic relationships or all
all
relationships?
encompassing. The only one that I thought was compelling was probably no one's going to agree with me because this is how I see characters. But Sid relationship, quote unquote, with like I don't remember her name, but like his old fling that was from the other side.
Benedicta.
Yes, her. I thought that relationship was very compelling
because there was a history rather than a new.
Yeah, there was a history, and they made that. I felt that history. Like I could understand that. It was compelling to me. Everything else just feels like dressing over some stuff. Like they're just kind of like, this is how it happened, and they don't really go into it. They don't like nonchalantly kind of give these hints at it, like through character moments. Like there's a scene where a certain character dies, and I'm like, this is way too soon. Like I barely even know this person. Like I don't understand why they're doing it now. I think it's extremely rushed, and they make it to like this like super crucial moment for like our characters, and I'm like, I don't like this. Like this feels, I don't know. It felt completely off to me.
I reached that moment as well, and again, I'm kind of only a little bit after that moment. I imagine, based off what I've seen with how the game is split up in terms of the prologue. Oh, also, I'm gonna put as like the lead. I think this should be a fair rule for the spoiler of this conversation. Anything that was in the demo, I feel is fair game to spoil, and that is up to the title card. The demo had been out for a few weeks. Most people have gotten to that point. I think it's cool to spoil up anything that happens up until the title card that was in the demo. But
good disclaimer.
Yeah, without getting into spoilers for this part, I imagine based off the lists I've seen of like where it's prologue, Act 1, Act 2, because this shift is the start of Act 2, that maybe it's the halfway point, but it feels much shorter than maybe it is, because I also felt that there was another reveal that the audience gets, but not the characters, about the fate of somebody that I thought was revealed too soon. I thought it would have been much more interesting to leave this mystery a little bit longer from the audience perspective.
I think I know who you're talking about. I don't want to say anything, but I think I know who you're talking about. And
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, cool. Yes, that's exactly where I was at too.
Yeah.
I called where that thing was going anyway, so I feel like that. I know in that moment it's a little different, and I know what you're talking about. But like, I think all of that is, if you even played the demo, I think it's in the demo. Right?
That part's not.
That part's not okay. If you even played like early on in this game, like I think that moment happening that you're referencing, like I don't know, it just feels like, yeah, I've played a Kingdom Hearts game. Like that's what it feels like.
See, maybe I'm naive. Yeah. I didn't, just because of like where we see the character originally.
That is also not sure. It's also not me saying that moment is bad. I saw it coming, so like that twist, quote unquote, I was like, Like, sure. Makes sense. So to me, it was just like another beat in the story. It was nothing that like caught me off guard
Yeah.
or was like a hype moment or anything like that. It was
Again,
just
all this
another
is
beat.
subject to change when I see how the story begins and ends.
Mhm. Yeah, personally, I like where the story is going. I don't because it was described as like Game of Thronesy, like in the and I see what they're getting at, but it's not. At least so far, it's not at
I haven't
all.
seen one titty, so not Game of
Yeah,
Thrones.
but like I understand where they're like the warring nations and like the unrest and like I get that, I guess, and they're going and I think like the Benedicta relationship with Sid, like which we already referenced, I do think that that relationship with the setting is probably the most Game of Thronesy thing that I've seen. And like I didn't even watch Game of Thrones that much. Like I think I watched like the first season and like spotty after that. Like
Yeah,
it
I've
just
never
wasn't
seen
it
it.
wasn't made for me. So I could be wrong because I've never watched like the entirety of Game of Thrones, but it I understand the influence. But beyond that, I don't think there's substance.
I think it's, I guess, somebody who hasn't watched Game of Thrones, but like I've gotten the vibe of it. I've seen pieces, whatever. It's seems scaled down because they're not doing 8 years worth of a story, and there's also not as many players involved.
Yeah.
So it's like, imagine you took the general concept of Game of Thrones and you put it into a 40-hour video game.
Yeah.
And so like I'm seeing the influence, but I do not think that they are the same thing.
I just think, and this could just be because like, it was one of the few talking points we had on Final Fantasy 16. I feel like every time this game was brought up, that was mentioned. The
Yeah.
Game of Thrones elements, it's gonna be cool. It's gonna have a really compelling story. That was just brought up every single time. And again, that could just be that's one of the few bullet points we had on this game. So like people were just that's what they had to report on or whatever. But yeah, I don't think those elements are there. Like blanket statement, yes, you'll understand what they're getting at. It's there. I just don't think it's filled with a lot of substance to like that claim. It's there though.
Mhm.
I will say that. Do you have anything that's like irking you? You have a bad quote unquote.
So I'm not shaming the game for being linear,
Hmm.
but the
I enjoy it for that.
how
But that's just me.
linear it is causing me to not give a shit about any of the side missions. Now, it's very rare that I 100% a game. I don't think I did many or even
Only two
a
for me.
single side mission in like God of War Ragnarok. And even Jedi Survivor, I just did ones where like I thought I'd get good gear out of it. But and Final Fantasy 15 had me do ones to grind for money.
Hmm.
And 7 Remake did the thing where every location you were in, like when you were in Sector 7, you could basically saw how many side missions there were. And then when you went to, I forgot which sector Aerith is from, but when you go to her sector, you see like all the side missions there are, and they all seemed achievable. And so like I did all of them. Like I didn't do like the, not VR as in like PlayStation VR, but like the in universe, they called them VR missions
Hmm.
for Final Fantasy VII, where
Right.
like you could train
Right.
and stuff and went stuff. I didn't do that, but like the actual side missions, I was compelled to do them as Cloud, helping out Aerith around her town,
Hmm.
and there felt like there was variety. The ones here all seem like fetch quests, and it's just, I leave this linear area and I fast travel to that linear area, and so I haven't been compelled to really do any of them.
I
Jill,
can I jump in on that a little
yes,
bit? I I think I've only done one side quest, and that was just to see what side quest had to
that yeah, I
offer.
think I did 1 or 2 of them like
And
for that reason.
it was like the guy whose wagon tipped over near the beginning. And I was like, I'll help you. Like,
Okay, I did that one as well because I was like, I'm
yeah,
right here, right?
yeah,
Like,
that was exactly why I was like, okay, I'll see what we got here. And then I think that was the only one I did, but I think I did another one on a technicality because I think you're forced into an encounter with I have it in my notes. It's like the something beasts. They're like they have like a new title. What's it? Notorious Mark. They have a notorious mark. Once you get to the area that you told me, once you pass, then
yes,
this like bulletin board
okay,
opens up.
I did that, but that one to me didn't come up as like a side mission, but more like a rare encounter.
I While I agree, like I said, it's like forced on you, and when you win that bulletin board opens up, that creature is axed out. So like that kind of because you can
So it
pursue them.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
So to me, it felt because it
was
did I
it the
have to do it?
eyeball?
Yeah. Did I have to do it for the main quest? Yes, because I was forced to. But like just the way it's all staged, like it looked like I can do more of what I just did. So it felt
Yeah,
like a side quest type of thing. So
we'll say
that's all I've done.
that was
But
the first thing in the game that killed me.
oh, I don't think I've died.
I just think I wasn't paying attention to my health because I always have potions and the dog
I have
around.
we can talk about gear in a little bit later, but I have the thing where like time freezes.
To
So I get
dodge.
I have
Yeah.
that pendant on because I'm just bad at parrying and stuff. So I was like, I'm just not gonna worry about that. And then I have my two things that power up some of my other moves. But I have that on, and sometimes I swear it just doesn't move. It just doesn't work. I was like, okay, like, and that's fine because it makes everything else so much easier. So like, if it works 90% of the time, I'm like, I'm
It's
not
yeah.
gonna die.
No,
So like,
I
I'm
feel that.
totally cool with it, and that is not a gripe at all. Um, but yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at with that. Any other bads before we get into some positive stuff?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I'd say so far the biggest one to me is Jill. I want her character to be doing so much more, but she's kind of just there, and I think that there is a compelling story to be told, and it's really unfortunate that like the main female character of the game isn't doing much, and we know that Final Fantasy has written good female characters before because we've seen Tifa, we've seen Aerith. I thought that Luna Freya in Final Fantasy 15, for being as minor as, because Luna Freya is not as big of a character as Jill or Tifa or Aerith is in her respective game, but they still give her a good amount of stuff from when we have her. It's really upsetting, and something that I've noticed is like even Jill's costume is boring. And I'm just gonna say this up front. I do not mean this in any sort of like, oh, they should have put her in like nothing but a G-string and armor that show. No, I'm not saying that. But like,
It is bland.
the thing is, you look at Clive and you go, that is clearly a person who is some sort of a soldier or a fighter. Okay, and then you look at Sid and you go, that's a person who's heavily relying on magic. That is a person who is, yeah, I was gonna say slutty, but you're right. Like that's a person who fucks. He's got the V-neck down to here. It's like his neck starts at his belly button. Like,
Distracting.
dude, listen, I've been considering, I've been like working on like a lightning character for D&D in the back of my head. I'm like, ooh, Sid is doing a lot of work for me here. Like, right? And then Jill goes, before she joins on your adventure, she's like, I need to change. And she comes out in like the same thing with like a vest and then a glove for her sword wielding hand.
Well, I think the gloves have more meaning later on. I think.
Oh, okay.
I think.
But again, it's just like, it's compared to the other main characters we're with and like kind of the trio we have for the game, everything, like, I try to think about some of the stuff she says in a cutscene. I'm like, this cutscene would have went exactly the same had she not spoken.
Yeah. They don't really give her a lot of moments to be her own character.
No, and the thing is,
beyond like the like soft spoken, like I've been through some shit person.
and the thing is, they start her story in a way where it's like she could have so much to do.
There's also scenes where Torgal's there and no one acknowledges Torgal. I'm like, fuck everyone. Like, fuck, this is so stupid and unrealistic. I would not be paying attention. They'd be like giving me a press conference about like how
Like, listen, this is how we're gonna take down this city, and you're just like, good dog.
Hi, Torgal, Dougie, the whole time.
Maybe that's why he's not in the cutscenes. So like, Clive's gonna get distracted if we bring him in.
There are definitely scenes where he's in the cutscenes and he's just there and no one acknowledges it. And I'm like, fuck, I can't do it. This game's a 0 out of 10.
Give me the Torgal spinoff game. Yeah. My two other, and again, these aren't like huge. I mean, Jill, I'd say, for me is a pretty big complaint. But my other two smaller nitpicks are, I wish the icon battles gave me more to do.
Yeah, they feel very structured and not in a positive way. I do think they're hype because like it's just like the spectacle on screen I think is good, but you're right.
That's the thing, is like they're focused so much more on the spectacle on screen, and like the one you do at the very beginning where it's the Phoenix versus Ifrit, you know, this is like what opens up the game before there's like a slight flashback. Again, this is stuff in the demo, so I'm okay describing this one. I get why that one's on the rails, because they can't start the game hoping for you to dodge shit at the Phoenix while you're also shooting fireballs at Ifrit. Okay. But like the icon versus icon fights, they should give you boosted up powers of the normal powers you have.
Have you fought Typhus?
Let me look up which one is Typhus.
I think he's the one after the moment happens that I reference the character dying. He's the big guy who's like levitating.
Yeah, with like multiple arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one felt a lot more engaging than the previous ones.
That one I'd say is the one that made me realize they're not as engaging as I'd like them to be.
Really? I liked that one.
But because he gets so many more moves than you do. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, if you want to make it these giant battles of these icons, give the icon I am now playing as the character the ability to do big esque moves. Like maybe give them a very long power up, but more than just dodge, melee attack, fireball attack.
Speed dodge for a long period of time.
Yeah, like I wish that there were these bigger, and because the thing is, the combat when you're playing as Clive is really good about adding combat into cinematics because they're like, we do want this to be a little bit showy. So yes, you as a character are not going to do a move where like you jump over somebody and stab them. We'll
Yep.
start a cutscene. We'll let you click some of the buttons. I wish they added that into the icon battles. Or again, give me this. Like I'm doing this because I'm thinking of like how I hold R2 to do the moves.
Hmm.
Give me up like higher versions of those moves to use as the icons to make these icon battles really feel like they're epic and at a grand scale. Because I arguably feel less powered as the icons than I do as Clive.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said at the top, they kind of focus a lot on the spectacle, like on screen. But I do still
But the
like them.
spectacle would be so much better if your character had like 2 more moves.
I agree. I think you're right. I still enjoy the icon battles, and I think the reason I enjoy them is not necessarily the like combat and the gameplay of them. It's just the change in pace of what you're doing. Because I think
Yeah.
they're paced out really well. It's not just like main enemy icon fight like every time. It's just kind of like it.
There's not a formula to it.
Yeah, it is kind of free range, and I like that, but it's spaced out
Yeah.
very well. So I enjoy that part of it. But Typhus was probably my favorite one so far. I have to say that one I enjoyed.
I think my last gripe is going to get a lot of people upset, but I have a reason.
Oh no.
The active time lore.
Oh fuck! I like
Here-
that. I like that a lot.
I do not dislike it. I do, however, one, wish I could use it on the map because I'm still trying to figure out which country is which country. Like you could go to the active time lore and they'll show you the flags for each
Wait,
of these
hold on,
countries.
Hold on. Did you got to the new like headquarters area, right?
Yeah. And I went to the same guy there.
There's a gal there that once you unlock her stuff, she literally gives you a rundown on all the like
Okay, I think I know who
countries
you're
or
talking
whatever.
about. I went to the guy from the first location that was like, I think they called him the Tomes or something.
Yeah, there's another gal, and it's not all unlocked right away. You have to do like 1 or 2 missions, and then they're unlocked fully.
See,
So I think the thing you're complaining about shows up later, or
I
it
wish
already has, and you don't know.
the thing is, I wish it didn't take till halfway through the game
Sure,
for
that's a
me
valid
to
point.
be able to look at the map and be like, this is that country, and then click on it and go, that country does this.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't care about any of that. Like
But the thing, I
the
get why
warring
they.
countries thing, it doesn't intrigue me. Like I understand enough to continue in the active time lore. I like that it's there for when I need it and when I want to know. Like when they drop like a term that I'm like, what is that? I literally
So
hit that and it's there and
it
it
works
helps.
great for that. But then, however, I do sometimes, I click active time lore, I read about someone, I'm like, oh, that clears up a lot of shit. How on earth did they expect me to get that? So I feel like it's almost used as a crutch.
Yeah,
Where,
and,
and I get why.
it's a give and take. It's a give and take.
And because I'll say, like, the thing is, because I played 15, I am remembering in 15 being like, what's the name of the country? And wait, the person these are very minor spoilers for Final Fantasy 15, but like the person that Noctis is getting married to is like for the princess of the other country, or are they part of the same country? And then the people attacking is which one again? And I wish I could have just looked at a map and like, that's him, that's her, that's them.
Sure.
And then there's like the names of the cities and all that, but like they still had exposition in the game.
Yeah.
I get why they can't do a full blown exposition because like you start the game as with Clive as like a teenager. So like he doesn't need somebody sitting him down being like, this is the planet Earth and we live like, imagine somebody sitting you down at 15 years old being like, you live in the United States, and within the United, like you're like, I went to first grade, I know this. But like they could have done it in a way where even if it was narration, even if it was the legend somebody's telling a kid of these 2 continents, I feel like they're not giving exposition because they're relying so heavily on the active time lore to the point that when I read the active time lore, I go, when was I supposed to learn any of this?
I understand that. I totally get that. It is a give and take. I think it's for me as someone. Again, I have not written anything, but I've like tried to. Like I've tried to like script out things and make character bios and dialogue and how people would interact. It doesn't matter. And I think like that to me would be comforting as a writer because you can tell the story a certain way and not have to worry about a whole bunch of different aspects.
Yeah, it's just that like I'm getting confused, especially because some of the kingdoms have like two names where it's like there's like the formal name,
Mm.
but then there's just like what the people call it.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know?
No, I completely understand. I just think from like the creative standpoint of how they're telling their narrative, I think yes, it is a crutch for the player when because like again, when
But
was
see,
I supposed to know
I say
this?
more they're using it as a crutch on themselves to not have to give any form of exposition.
See, I guess, but like again, as a writer, that'd be comforting to me to know that I don't have to explain every little nitty gritty detail about this to at least get enough across to you
Yeah,
because you
I
have
would
this
have just
character. I
liked a.
understand.
I would have just liked a basis of like this is the general vibe
Mhm,
of this world or the
mhm.
general history of this world. And again, I just wish I could put the flags to the places on the maps.
I also think I mean, that's a good point. I also think that it's even more like fuel to the fire that this is a character action game. Like it is a game about Clive, and it's not like a sprawling world RPG to explore. It like you're following Clive the whole
Yeah,
time, and it's just Clive's story. And like,
this did remind me of one more gripe I had with it.
mhm, okay,
Okay, I don't get this. This might come off bad, but so we know that the game talks a lot about like class systems and slavery and
mhm,
people that are treated as less than. When I heard that coming up, I was like, oh, the people that have magic are on top because they got fucking magic.
mhm,
And then they tell me the people that have magic are at the bottom. I'm like, but you guys have magic. Just fucking
mhm,
kill them.
mhm.
Like, and then it doesn't make sense that throughout all of these countries, to different levels, the people that have magic are like the working class, the slaves, the lesser than. But the leaders are the icon or are the dominants, the icons. That feels like honestly the when we see them when they're talking about that one nation where they're like, oh, they view being the dominant as like twice as big a sin as wielding magic.
Hmm.
Part of me goes, I don't agree with that, but the logic follows so much more.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know what I?
I had the thought where I was like, Clive, if you weren't a dominant, you would probably. I mean, you were in the family, whatever. If someone wasn't a dominant and who is like, would they just be owned by someone? Like, is
No,
that
it sounds like in the other nations, the dominants hold some sort of power other than the ones that view them as like a sinful thing.
no? I know, but I'm just saying, like, if you weren't a dominant, so like so like
If
you
Clive was a
just a bearer or whatever.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, you.
and they touch on that.
Yeah, so like the only reason he isn't is because he was in the royal family and he happened to be a dominant, even though he didn't know he was.
Yeah, but like the logic of the one where they treat the dominant just as bad, if not worse, as the bears, that logic makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
But even then, I'm like, but why the people who have magic have fucking magic,
Mhm.
guys?
Yeah, it makes me think of like the ultra rich or just like
And I think I get the message is like, well, they do everything. Like they literally hold the power. But I feel like it also would have made sense to be like, oh, the people who have magic are in the upper class. They're using their magic for whatever. And the people who can't use magic are the ones doing the stuff that they don't bother with, like
yeah,
cooking and
and
grocery shopping or transportation.
and
Because
I
what do
follow that.
you know what I mean?
I follow that. I
So that
think
was a
it's
little backwards to me. And I felt that like the most oppressive country in this fictional world was the one whose logic arguably made the most sense.
sure. Yeah. I feel like it's more just like you're not human because you can do this thing, and that's why they're just looked down on. Even though, but yeah, you're totally right.
But then they praise the dominants who are even less human, arguably.
Do they? I think sometimes they do. I don't think they always do, but
Other than that
you're
one
right.
nation, it sounds like the dominants are high up.
Sure. And maybe that is the case, but
Yeah.
but yes, I had that thought too, where it was like, there's definitely some like trickery here, where like people being owned by others, but they have magic, and it's like, yeah, dog, just fucking use your magic.
Fireball.
But
Like, come on, man.
yes, it does seem like the oppressive rich are kind of like making that all work in their favor, and that
Yeah.
their power
To be
to
fair,
counteract the magic
yeah.
is like
I want to say, all
money.
right, I like the political message, and I like that art is political, and I like the message specifically in this game.
Yeah.
The logic of who's on top and who's not is kind of dumbfounding to me.
Sure. And then maybe there's more into like Final Fantasy lore that we don't understand to it.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I think if
But
it,
yes,
yeah,
where I'm at in the story, the commentary I do find like good and compelling. I've heard that just
absolutely.
completely
Yeah.
drops off. near the end, I've heard, but like I'm not there yet. So where I'm at in the story, which I think is a little past halfway, I think it's good. Now, right where I'm at, they're following Jill into like her moment, and this moment for Jill, like all of that has gone to the wayside because we're focusing on Jill, and like I'm cool with that. But like I'm assuming that people's gripes were like it just goes away is like after this point they just never touch on it again. And I'm like, no, please don't bring it up
It's
again.
like learning about like the Civil Rights
We
Act in
need to know.
elementary school. They're like, and then racism was over, and you're like, okay,
God damn it. We did it.
we
Cool.
did it.
No, it doesn't exist anymore. So yeah. Do you want to get into the good? Do you have any more nitpicks?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, I'll take it from here then. But before we get into the good, I want to God damn it, I fucked that up real bad. I want to, what's the term? It's not coming to me.
Pitch, push,
Remind, not reimagine, remind. Fuck. I want to remind everyone watching that if you somehow like what you just saw, that we are shared screens and we are just a group of 8 people trying to create stuff. So watch our other content. What other content do we have, Jordan? I know we have like the Marvel shows coming out.
Yeah. So one, Austin, is I think what you want to imagine is that we get to a bunch of subscribers someday. You know what I mean? And we can
Yeah.
play these games in advance.
We're nearing 500, and we've got a few codes in advance. Just for your record, we do okay. But yes, we're nearing 500 subscribers.
Yeah. We imagine a world where we have 500, maybe even 500,000, but you know, that's a long shot. However, as for other stuff we do have Secret Invasion episode reviews every week here on the channel. And I think we also have all our live streams posted, especially the newest one, Shared Screen Smackdown, where we had a whole Street Fighter tournament.
Yeah. And I believe like
Don't spoil
that no, well, you probably know who it is. But I think like that was probably the most ambitious project we've done, right?
I think when it comes
Arguably.
to the amount of behind the scenes tech work we did, absolutely.
Yeah, without a doubt. So support us and just literally like our stuff. Share it. Subscribe. All that fun stuff. Anything you think that would help probably will. So do it. Comment down below. Thank you. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. Thank you very much. So, getting into the good. My first note, and I love this. I said everyone's hot.
I mean, listen,
everyone is so hot.
Austin, I know this is only your second Final Fantasy game. Granted, it's only my third and a half if I count Crisis Core. Think about Final Fantasy. Everyone's always hot.
Mm-hmm. Get used to it. I understand. But Sid, whew, like when I said it's distracting, it wasn't just his like V-neck. Like he as a specimen, I enjoy, and his voice. Did you see what I put in the Discord a while back?
I did. All right, yeah, I did see what you posted.
Yeah, it said something like pouring honey over thunder. I don't have the credit to give to you out there on Twitter. I am sorry, but that's the most perfect description of someone's
It's a low
voice.
I wish I could have.
It's so
like I'm not insecure
good
about my voice. I'm like I have a whiny voice. Like, oh, I wish I could sound like that sometimes.
It's so good. And like, can you imagine if you're that person and someone describes your voice as pouring honey over thunder? I'm like, yeah, I fucking did it.
It's just everything.
I did the thing.
Everything he says sounds sexy.
It's unfair. You can't look like Sid and sound like Sid. That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, it's okay. So I did want to touch, and I find this to be a good aspect because I said like this is a character action game, and I enjoy it for that. Like it's the died back version a little bit of like the God of War that I would have wanted out of Ragnarok, and I enjoy it for that. Like I'm like full steam ahead for that. However, I am the person that also likes sprawling RPGs, so I think it's worth mentioning because like my favorite game of all time is Fallout 3. If you watch any of our content, you've probably heard me say that at least twice. But I love RPGs. This game, this Final Fantasy XVI game, is a good-ass video game. And it's because it's doing something, not because, but it doing a character action game or it doing a sprawling RPG. I like them both for different reasons, and this one nails the character action aspect, in my opinion. So, as someone who likes both of those genres, it's good. And it doesn't take anything away that it's not a sprawling RPG.
And, you know, if there's anything I learned from only playing a very few number of Final Fantasies, and from what I've heard other people who have been with the series much longer than I've been, is that the whole point of Final Fantasy is that they kind of change it up anytime they want. There is the only thing that keeps them connected is the general lore and the items you come across. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What?
I said chocobos. That's the only thing.
Yeah. They're actually the masters of the multiverse, and they're jumping between each one of these. But so, like, you know, this one is a pure medieval fantasy. Like when you think of like fantasy RPG, like this is what you're imagining.
Mhm,
carriages, horses,
mhm,
all that stuff.
mhm.
7, very much a sci-fi,
Yeah,
or more modern sci-fi.
I was thinking of that, and I think 7 is a completely different product in the way that, like, yes, it's gameplay and, like, there's more RPG elements in my opinion to it, like,
But even
kinda
just the
thrown
vibe
in
of the
there.
world.
But I think the thing, yes, you're totally right. I think the thing that changes it for most of 7 for me is the fact that it feels like kids doing that. Those all feel like kids running into battle, like the stuff with Wedge and all that. Like there's a kiddish nature to all of that, like a
Definitely
youngish.
younger. Yeah.
Yes. Like not maybe not teen, but you understand what I'm getting at. Like it feels like they're more like aloof, like they don't know what the
Mhm.
fuck they're doing. They're
Except
just
for
kind of
Barrett.
going for it.
Barrett's seen some shit,
Yeah,
man.
but he's not, I wouldn't call Barrett a child. He's not a child.
That's what I'm
But
saying. He's the one that's not.
like that nature is there in 7. Where here it's I don't think it's there, but I don't think it needs to be. I don't think they're trying to tell that type of
Yeah.
story.
And then
I think
15.
that's what separates it from me personally as like
Yeah.
a setting and what they're trying to go for and the characters like that. That's what separates it
Yeah.
for me personally.
And then 15 is a modern fantasy where you have fantasy elements of kings and knights and bodyguards and
Yeah.
princesses, but they have a fucking car in the game, like a modern ass car, and there's guns and but there's like magic mixed with technology and that whole, so like they
Mhm.
like to reinvent it every iteration, and
In
I
7,
welcome
you
it.
fight a house, and it was fucking awesome. It was super cool. Like when that popped up, I'm like, no, this is
When I
so
saw that,
dumb.
I was like, this fucking rules. And then 3 hours later, when I finally beat that boss, I was like,
Yeah.
fuck that house.
I had the exact opposite. I was like, this is so stupid. Like, I don't understand why I'm fighting a house. Fast forward a half hour. Fuck this house. This was awesome. This is fantastic. This is my favorite like combat segment of this entire game. Yeah, it was good. Fun but not daunting combat is something I have. Which in God of War, I liked the combat, but I never felt like I got the hang of it. Like I never had my go-to moves in God of War Ragnarok. I keep comparing this to God of War, and I'm going to throughout the review
Yeah.
impressions piece. So just settle in. But here, I feel like I have where I'm using my circle on the fire and I'm like beaming to them. I'm using Torgal. I'm beating them up, and then I'm using my like flame cycle thing, and then I'm using the thing to I don't know what it's called. I think it's called like it's an A one, like acceleration or something like that.
Wait,
And
I think it might be my favorite move I've ever gotten to pull off in a video game. Is it the one where he just like runs and his sword's flinging and he connects all the people?
yeah, it's like a shoulder charge, but he just like keeps going, and he can like
Yeah.
pick all the people up. Yeah,
Yeah, that one, that is my favorite fucking move in a video game in a long time. It's become my signature. I'm like, I'll let you finish about the combat, but like that move, it fucking kicks ass. It makes me feel so cool
Mhm.
every time.
Yeah, but like the way I go about combat is I focus on one person, and because I have that necklace that allows me to like hit R1 to dodge, I don't have to pay attention to anything else. Like I can just focus in on one thing because if I'm about to get hit, one, if it's dodgeable, it will show me. Two, if it's not dodgeable, I'm not gonna die. Like I'll be fine. I
Yeah,
did hear some gripes where like people were saying like there's not enough to do with like potions and those items, and I think they're right. But in my opinion, I come across them enough to where like if I'm low on them, you're about to find some. Like you're about to get them any
yeah.
minute now.
I did think it was interesting that you have a limit into how many potions and
It's worth noting that some of the side quests improve those. I haven't done those,
gotcha.
but from what I've heard from people talking about this game, some of the side quests can up like your
There,
max
yeah.
quantity for
I
those
still found
things.
that
I
interesting
think
though,
pretty sure like
because like yeah,
99.
you're right. There isn't party management, and like potions in the other Final Fantasies are like potions in Pokemon, where you collect as many as you can because you never know when you're going to need to just
Yeah.
flood everybody with them between
Yeah.
battles.
And I like the balance of that because like I don't have to worry about all the shit I'm having. I don't have to worry about all this gear I'm having. It's very very streamlined. It's very very simple. And like the way I go about combat, where again I just focus on one. I use Torgal. I basically focus on all the henchmen until I get to the main guy, and then I break the main guy's like bar where he's like falls
Stagger
over. Thank you, stagger bar, and then that's when I just unload
all the specials.
all of my specials, and then that's like my strat, which
Yeah,
is just take care of everyone else, dodge when I can, and then take on the big baddie mano y mano.
the combat feels very fun.
It's fun
Or
and not daunting. That's what I love.
it looks more fun. I will say that sometimes playing it gets a tad bit boring because I was like, I could just do everything here. And I feel myself just pressing square because
Yeah.
it is the most consistent, regular damage I can do. Like the charge attacks, I don't feel are comparable to slashing of the sword. And so when I'm waiting for the other powers to like refresh again,
Hmm.
I'm kind of just square, 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 square. And like I'm not gonna say the word
I
I
force
wish.
myself to switch it up. Like
Same.
I'll do
Yeah.
like the X square where you like kind of like lunge, and then I'll
Oh,
jump and
my
do it
down
like a
thrust.
hammer down.
Yeah, I love down thrusting, so I find ways to do that.
I love down thrusting. Me too, Jordan.
So does Sid. You know what I mean? That's a man who down thrusts a lot.
I want to see his lines down there. You know what I mean? Like his freaking like I can't even imagine.
His
Anyway, go on.
V lines,
Yeah,
dude.
go on. You were gonna say
Basically,
something. I interrupted.
no, it's fine. Now I'm thinking about Sid's,
Sid's V lines.
Sid's V line.
That's
Um,
so good.
so yeah, like I'll do a thing where like I'll like role play in my head and be like, let me take down this one first. And like I'm not loving the wind powers, but I'm liking I get to
Yeah,
grab people and pull them to me.
yeah.
That one's been fun.
I don't love him either. I think the wind powers are more of an aesthetic to me because when you use the thing, I think it's called gouge, and you're just like da 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 da.
Oh,
Like
see, I
that is
took that one off. I didn't like it.
I like the basic ones where it's like an AoE or I get everyone in this big spinning thing with the cycle, and I
Yeah.
like the ones that are simple because then I know they're gonna connect. If you get like I don't like the circle for the lightning powers because you have to like ding ding ding.
As
Ding.
okay,
I don't like that at all because
I
I'm
have
so used to that button doing other things at this point in the game that I'm just like fuck.
especially with it's so different where it's like, oh brings you to them in the fire one. In the grass one, it brings them to you.
Wind.
The lightning's just like, no, completely different thing.
Yeah, yeah, if you make that mistake with the grass or fire, thinking or now you got me all fucked up with the wind or the fire.
Did I say grass?
You said grass, and then I know I
It's
said grass.
green, man. It's green. There's birds. I don't know.
If you get the mix up between wind and fire, then like you're okay. Like you'll get to the same result ish. If you do that with the lightning, you're just standing there like a dumbass.
Yeah,
You're
and
just like, oh,
as somebody who loves lightning powers,
same. That's what
like
I'm maining as in Diablo.
lightning and ice powers have always been my shit. I got dude, when I got Infamous 2 at like 16 years old, I was like, this is the peak of gaming right here, man. I get both. Literally, I'm planning out 2 D&D characters, one with a lightning set, one with an ice set. I'm finding the lightning powers a little lacking, and I think that it's more I'm grading harder with lightning because I love it so much and I want to use it for everything.
Yeah,
Um,
I always go into a fight with the fire powers on. Always, every time.
to me, those are like
My
the
bread and butter.
default. Yeah,
That's my bread and butter. Yeah, I like those a lot. The lightning to me feels like a huge power thing right now, and the fire seems balanced, and the wind feels like I want you over here.
yeah.
That
I think when I get to my first even mini boss battle with the lightning powers, I'm going to appreciate them a lot more. But in
yeah.
terms of like having to fight like swarms of enemies, they're not
Mhm.
doing it for me.
Thing I like about because both at least the ones that I have set because again I like the simplistic like you hit the button boom something happens. I don't like the like you have to wait that long for a thing to happen or it's like more you have to like plan it out in accordance. The one because they're both like AoE ish. One just like you hit the staff down and it goes like 3 bolts like right on a character. And the other one is just like boom and then like a wide array of power hits these enemies. But the one that is like 3 bolts, Yoshi, I'll put you out in a second. Chill. But the one that is like 3 bolts that hits, you have to like power it up first, and it takes a few seconds. And I forget that sometimes, and I'm in the midst of fighting, and I'm just like, huh? And then I get my shit rocked, and half my bar goes down. I'm like, fuck. But I like that it's forcing me to change because I still want those abilities in my repertoire. So like,
Yeah.
because it's so simple, when you're toying around with stuff, you don't have like a ton of options. So like to me, I like that. I understand if you're going into like again, God of War Ragnarok had a lot more options to like move stuff around, or like typical RPGs, or maybe even a typical Final Fantasy RPG. You're gonna have a lot of options for move sets, or like what do you want to use. And I
Yeah,
feel like this is streamlined in a good and positive way for me as a player. I
I
can't
get
say
what
that
they're doing where,
for everyone.
yeah, it's not that you're playing as a fire Clive and I'm playing as a lightning Clive. And it's no, Clive has access to all of it, but he only has access to a little bit from all of it type of thing. So everybody kind of gets the same thing. Um, I just wish that not even in every battle, in some battles that type I don't know if this is how Final Fantasy refers to it, but just with a Pokemon in my brain wants to go type advantages or like elemental disadvantages kind of thing where like if I'm fighting a person made out of water, maybe fire isn't the best to use. Like I just wish that some boss battles had that so it kind of mattered
I
what I
I
was using.
I explored that because I think I mentioned on this podcast that it was the year before on that you go to a volcano area and there are like fire enemies, and I'm
You
like,
mentioned that
huh.
before recording, yeah.
I was like, huh, I'm gonna go hit them with fire, and it shows you how much damage it does. Like the
It doesn't
numbers
say
pop up.
resisted or
Nope,
half or
nope.
no.
But I tried the same, like this, basically the same attack with another ability, and did the exact same damage. And I was like, okay. But I'm glad that I knew that and I could figure that out like that. Like
Yeah,
I thought that was good.
I just wish to like I think that if even if it was just like mini bosses or ones or and major bosses or ones where that was a factor, it would make combat feel so like it had stakes and that you had to actually change stuff up.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, Austin.
Hmm.
While we were paused, I did see a tweet from a friend of mine who's also a big fan of share screen. So shout out to Ed Santiago for like hyping us up on Twitter and all that good stuff. Thanks, Ed. You're a good friend.
I had
He says, and this is something I'm pitching to you because I've never played Kingdom Hearts. He
hmm.
says the boss fights of Final Fantasy XVI I've done so far are on the same level of the last Zemnis fight in Kingdom Hearts 2. Xemnas.
Zemnis. Yeah, I know he's talking. I
Zemnis.
know what he's talking about. I think, is he saying that as a good thing?
I
I didn't
assume
like.
so.
I didn't love any of those fights. Like I like the one that I brought up with. I brought up his name earlier, Typhus.
Yeah.
Maybe. I enjoyed that one. I didn't love it. I don't love any of the icon fights, and the boss fights in Kingdom Hearts I never liked either. So I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe that might just be me though. So who knows?
Gotcha. You didn't like fighting Christmas or whatever
But
that dude's name was?
but I understand the comparison.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. I mentioned once before, but I just want to clarify. Like with this being a character action game, I think that was the right choice, because I think it's easier to enter into like a world like this in a character action game. Whereas if you enter into a sprawling RPG, you're gonna feel like you're gonna miss something, and it's a lot easier to just kind of get lost in the sauce doing something else. So
Yeah.
I think this is a better way to get you into the universe with this style of game, rather as a big normal typical Final Fantasy. I think would have been harder to pitch to someone or get them like fully into. We talked about gear and like upgradable stuff. I like the upgrade tree. I don't think it's very confusing. I think it's very straightforward. There are some things in there that I'll never use, so I haven't touched them,
Yeah.
or I'll never use a lot, so I don't really touch them.
Have you figured out what it means to master
That was my
something?
next thing. I was like, I have no idea what this means, but I'm doing it.
I'm
I'm
assuming it
mastering
makes
them.
them more, but like I don't see the stars going up, so like I'm just like, sure, I'll spend money.
Yeah, I'm exactly right there with you. The exact same thing. I was literally in my notes. It's like, it's straightforward. No idea what mastering does though, but I'm doing it. Mastering is just like when you essentially like level it all the way up. There's like one more thing that you can do, and it says like master this, and I don't think it.
Because
I
okay,
haven't physically seen it do
for
much.
the like this like the special moves, the powered moves, you
Yes.
can like upgrade them twice and then master them. I assume it like ups their damage, maybe lowers their refresh time.
Yep.
But for like the regular moves that you could master, again, I do it, and even for the power moves, I don't see the stars for damage go up, and I don't
Yep.
know what the second set of stars means.
I don't remember.
The UI needs active time lore.
But again, I don't remember what that second thing is. But when you're in the moment, it all makes sense. Like I don't think anything about that is confusing,
Yeah, no,
except
it's
for the mastering. I don't know
yeah,
what
yeah.
that does. But yes, I make the same assumption where I'm like, I think this makes it like do more damage and probably come back faster, like your liver refresh rate. I think that makes sense. The environments, the cutscenes, all the scale, fantastic.
Oh,
Like
beautiful game. I mean, I'm playing. Are you playing on performance or graphics?
graphics. I think I switch back and forth, but graphics is what I
Yeah.
primarily play on.
So I haven't had any frame rate issues playing in performance. I heard that some people have, but those people I think were earlier reviewers, so maybe it's just like a day one patch was able to fix that, or I haven't
Yep.
noticed severe drops. I switched into graphics a couple times though, and I didn't see like a severe difference, but like in graphics mode, like, or even in performance mode, this game is beautiful, man.
Stunning. Like in terms of like looking like a current slash next gen, like whatever you want to call that, like it is that. This is
Hmm.
what this game is, like without a doubt. The one thing that I would probably lump into the bad category, now that I'm talking about this, I just jogged my memory. The motion blur that you can't edit at all drives me nuts. I don't know what it is. I always turn motion blur off,
It's
but like,
usually same, but I haven't noticed it being an issue in
oh,
this game
I hate it.
because you're very rarely ever moving fast.
Here's the thing: when I'm in combat, it's fine. When I'm doing literally anything else, drives me bonkers. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is about it. But like I'll move it. If I'm in an environment and just running on a like a path to get somewhere, I have to stop, wait for the things to level out to see like my environments. Like I can't just like turn my head and look back and forth. Like that's not how this game is not programmed to work that way. Like I have to physically stop moving and then look.
Yeah.
And yes, I've tried both performance and graphics.
Yeah. I don't like how slow he runs, even when he goes into
Yeah,
sprinting.
that's okay. I wouldn't call that a gripe. I know you're not saying that as that, but there's a lot of games where that's the case. You know what I mean? Like if this moment was happening for me as a player, I'm sprinting the fuck out of there. I'm not light jog. You know what I mean? Like that's always
Not
gonna
even
be
that.
it.
It's just one of the things where it's like, listen, man, I don't want to spend 2 minutes walking across this empty field. Let me do it in one. Like every game needs to give us like a super sprint.
Yeah, at least like put it on a button.
Yeah.
Like let me do that for like 10
It was
seconds or
weird
something.
that this one was automatic and that like you can't run in like places like hideaways or inns
Yeah,
or even certain towns.
it did teach you to walk slower in the tutorial,
I
which
was
I
like, I
wanted
was
to
like,
segue into just real quick. The
yeah.
tutorials are really good. Like they're really short. They're to the point that you
Oh,
understand them. I think that every tutorial I've come across for whatever it is, I've liked because they don't overstay their welcome. They digest all the things you need to know in a quick, concise way, and I appreciate the tutorials for that.
yeah.
Last
I also
thing.
loved, and again, this is something I'm okay spoiling to an extent because it happened in the demo. I loved that the tutorial came as a flashback, and then I thought it was going
Yes.
to end so much earlier, and I was like, oh no, this is just a prologue now.
Yeah, yeah. I almost said it like when you were talking about it before, but I really enjoyed the little like jump back in time. That was the demo, right? Right?
I didn't play the demo. From other people I've talked to, the demo brings you up until you see the title card.
Yeah, I don't remember when that happened. To be honest with you.
That was at the end of. I mean, we said spoilers up till the demo, but I guess
Mhm.
now that we're not sure, I don't want to say anything too.
I understand that. It's blurry for me what is before and after the demo, like in that little like hour
Basically,
period.
when he gets pulled out of the rubble and his mom goes, "He'd be a good soldier." That's like where it jumps
Right.
to the title card of Final Fantasy 16.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And my last thing, because I am not the music guy. Like music never jumps out to me. Like when I'm physically writing a review, like over at 6-1, like we have like a presentation segment, and that's where you go into like the music and like the
Mhm.
aesthetic and everything. My music thing is always itty bitty. It's like 2 sentences. Like it's just not something that makes or breaks a game for me. The tunes in this game are fucking awesome. Like they're not every game gets me to stop and just kind of like listen to it.
Yeah,
This game does. Like on more than one occasion. I've
yeah,
played maybe 15 to 20 hours, maybe, and I've stopped like 5 to 6 times just to like live in
yeah.
that moment.
With me in video games music, there are like the tracks that I'm like, this will stick with me for a long time that like I can listen to. But then like a lot of other ones were like Spider-Man 2018, for example, favorite game of all time. I was listening to that Spider-Man theme, not the one that I was listening to the one that they released from the Hollywood Bowl concert on Sunday, but even just like last week, I was listening to the Spider-Man one theme. Dun, 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 dun. Boom, love it, right? I listen to like the rest of that soundtrack. I'm like, I have no idea what moments these are fucking connected to. I'm gonna be honest. So like, it's
Yes.
it's very hit or miss for me. Um, the music in this game is good. I don't know if I like the I'm not gonna say I don't like that they use the same music a lot because that feels like the whole why are you giving them the same animations? Like I get it, game development is hard. It's fine. I don't mind that. Certain points where the tune drops to something so much more mellow sometimes happens in these giant grandiose moments of a fight, and I'm like, I am kicking in what is basically a god's ass right now, and you're having me listen to like a little light lute, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this doesn't match. Like the epicness sometimes doesn't because they're using the same track for different parts during big fights. You sometimes get the lulls at the moment there shouldn't be the lull,
Yeah. I haven't
and that
noticed
stuck
that.
out to me as like more poorly than the good moments
Sure.
have.
Sure. For me,
Because
I haven't noticed that. So like the tunes are just like I said, I've just basked in those moments on like more than one occasion, and I really
yeah,
enjoy that.
I
Maybe
can't
those
hum
maybe
it.
it's supposed to like be like a gentle pat on the back, like you got this, buddy. It's
I don't
okay.
know. Like I can't. The thing is, I can't hum it, but I'm sure if I described it, you know it. Like there's moments in like the epic soundtrack where it kind of dials down to just being like a nice light string instrument, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And I had that moment during a boss battle where I'm just hacking and slashing, using my moves, and like I need to do that. Like it was a very pivotal
Was
moment.
it was it when you were fighting a dragon? You
No,
fight it. You fight a dragon. Spoilers.
no. It
Yeah.
wasn't during that.
There was my favorite moment so far was when you enter that area where you do fight the dragon, like this like melody starts to pick up, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oof, and you see the scale of like the
I'd
environment that
say
you're in.
so
I'm like, ooh,
far, like
it's
this
really
is a
good.
more of a if you know, you know. L3, R3, accept the truth.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was a good moment.
yeah.
Shout
That
out
was a good
to
moment.
I won't spoil
On
how
the
it's used.
nose,
Yeah.
but it's good. But it's good.
I won't spoil how it's used in Jedi Survivor, but Jedi Survivor also had a moment where it was like L3 and R3, and it didn't say like it said like a different phrase that was more in universe. And I was like, this fucking rules.
Mhm. Like pick up the sword or something like I don't know, something like that. But
It's a
yeah,
lightsaber, actually. No, I'm just kidding.
what would you classify a lightsaber as? Huh? Huh? What would you classify it as? Huh? Huh? A sword? Because
It's a
it's a sword.
saber made of light.
Which is what? Which is what, Jordan?
It's whatever you want it to be.
My
Um,
lightsaber.
I what I do like is because again, somebody who hasn't played that many Final Fantasies,
Same.
there are like 3 Final Fantasy songs that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Somnus from Final Fantasy
I
15,
don't know
which is
any
like
by name.
that one I know because I just wanted to listen to it so much. And that is like the title card song. Like when you're like in the new game, continue, options, Final Fantasy 15. That one, beautiful. Also, when you beat the game, you get lyrics to it.
Hmm.
Okay.
Wow.
One-Winged Angel, because how can you not? That just fucking slaps. And then just the regular Final Fantasy theme, like the theme that they have used in every version. The dun, 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 dun. And I like that they're using that in here.
Mhm. Yeah, that's always a pop moment. If you like if you know, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
whenever the main theme starts again, but it's like a little different. It's just there's just some kind of tinge to
Yeah.
it. You're like, ooh, oh my god, hello, old friend.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it's moments like that that when I think of like, well, the game is a lot more linear. The game isn't
yep,
as RPG heavy. That makes me go,
yep.
this might be a really good first Final Fantasy for a significant amount of people.
Yeah, it feels because like I said before, 7 remake feels like more of an RPG than this game. I would say
Absolutely.
like I think the elements are more prominent, more expansive.
Yeah.
And that's not even saying that like Final Fantasy VII remake was like a sprawling RPG. I just think like the elements
Well,
there were
it's become
more.
that thing where I think that as RPGs have gone on, we now have RPG elements in non full blown art because people could argue that Spider-Man 2018 has RPG elements
Yeah,
because you have a
the
skill
gear
tree
and the skill
and
tree.
gear. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally get it. So I think that's like my final like statement is if you're going into this game wanting a sprawling RPG, you're not going to get that. I
But
do
that doesn't
still, I do still think the game good, game
game
good,
good for sure.
game worth your time. I genuinely think that. I think by the end of the year, this is going to be in my top 5-ish for the year. Like I think it's that good. This is a good year for games. So I
Oh
just think
man, it's a good year for games.
I want this encapsulated in the review. This is a good year for video games. 2023 is a good ass year for video games. Final Fantasy 16 will probably be in my top 5 for the end of the year. Boom. That's how good I think it is. And the 8.5 score I think is perfect. I think there's going to be a lot. Actually, I haven't looked at all at review scores actually, but I would not be surprised if there's a lot of 8s.
Let me
Not
check
eight
real
five,
quick.
8s. I would not be shocked. I know we got a decent amount of 10s for that, like that title splash thing. Like, look at all these 5 out of 5s or 10 out of 10s.
Yeah. Um,
Like, what's the Metacritic at? Metacritic at?
so okay, does Fantasy Critic use Open Critic or Metacritic? Because that's what I went to for some reason. But it has an 89 on
Oh,
whatever one that uses, which I think is just an aggregate score.
I expected like an 83. So it's wow, people are really liking this game, and maybe that's
Yeah.
more of a
So here's the
critical
thing:
thing.
some people are really, really liking the game, and I'm not here to shit on that. I personally see it as still a solid game, but it's not the greatest game to ever grace the planet.
Yeah,
That came out in April, and that was Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, which is actually like 10 games.
but yeah, I think game good. Game worth your time in 2023 with the expansive year that we have of video games. This is a must play for 2023. I believe
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I think it's, again, so far as to where I am. The story is the thing that is keeping me going the most. Like, and the combat is fun.
And
Don't
it's
get me
beautiful.
wrong.
It's just beautiful. Like
It's
every
just,
sprawling environment is so good.
yeah.
Like I said, it's not a sprawling RPG, but you have sprawling environments. Like they're linear, but like
You can't walk there, but you can see how beautiful they look.
It looks bigger than it is, but it looks it's fucking pretty. It's a pretty ass video game. They know what they're doing over there with that engine.
The landscape's pretty. The characters pretty. The
No,
dragons.
fuckable.
Leave that up to you.
Thank you for watching. That's been our review of Final Fantasy XVI. Bye bye.